An assault on the Wolf School Witcher fortress, which ended in many of their secrets in regards to mutagenetic substances and stimulants being stolen and shared throughout the rest of the world for the first time. The group responsible for this crime is the criminal organisation called the Salamandra, and on the day of the attack on the Witcher stronghold were led by the Zerrikanian sorcerer Azar Javed. In this video, we're going to be discussing the Salamandra as well as taking a look at two of the main members of the organisation, Azar Javed and the Professor. But before we start, if you're new, please consider checking out some of my other lore videos. I'll have a link to them up in the top right, and subscribe if you enjoy them. Let's start with a quick rundown of what the Salamandra actually is. The Salamandra is a criminal organisation represented by the symbol of a fire lizard, known as a salamander. Members can usually be identified by the Salamandra symbol shown on their body in the form of a tattoo. The most common places for these tattoos are either on the head or shoulder, though this isn't always the case as some members don't even have this tattoo at all, maybe just to stay incognito. Most, if not all, members carry a badge or brooch, which they use as a way to identify each other, maybe used if there's an absence of a visible tattoo. This badge also was an indicator Geralt once used to identify the Salamandra he killed, as they would all have one on their dead body. There are many different ranks within the Salamandra, but the ones we know of are Lackey, Assassin, Boss, Commander, Masked Warrior, and Mage. The Salamandra are generally located in and around the city of Vizima, but after being dismembered have spread out into different parts of the world. From the perspective of an outsider, the Salamandra seem to be low-life thugs that have a hand in many different criminal activities, but mainly deal in the drug fist tech, as it's widely known that in certain areas they are the ones who are manufacturing and distributing the substance. But the side known to only a few goes much deeper and is far more ambitious than dealing drugs for coin. Secretly, the Salamandra are working with the Order of the Flaming Rose, who were a fanatical religious group who were strong believers in Ithlinne's prophecy and also harbored much hate towards non-humans. The reason for the Salamandra working with the Order of the Flaming Rose is never explicitly explained, but through what we know, one can speculate that either they did it purely for coin, or either they had a deal cut with the Order. The reason the Order used the Salamandra was because they could do all the behind-the-scenes dirty work without tarnishing the Order's name in the eyes of the public. This work included the robbery that took place at Kaer Morhen in order to obtain the Witcher secrets. The reason for this was that the Salamandra and the Order of the Flaming Rose wanted to make their own race of superhuman mutants who, when the time came, would help with the overthrowing of the king, and then later would guide the remnants of the human race south when the White Frost eventually came. The story of Geralt and the Salamandra starts not long after Geralt had returned to Kaer Morhen and is suffering from amnesia. The attack comes from nowhere, leaving the Witchers outnumbered and unprepared. The Salamandra organised their assault on Kaer Morhen with the help of the Wolf School Witcher Berengar, who wanted revenge on them for forcefully turning him into a Witcher, which he never wanted. With the help of Berengar, the Salamandra planned their assault very carefully, hand-selecting the warriors who were to help with the attack. These warriors were selected by a man known as the Professor. The Professor was a cunning assassin that wore the distinctive spectacles that Geralt has the option of purchasing during an auction in Oxenfurt. The Professor's weapon of choice was a crossbow that he would sometimes use wrist-mounted. With this crossbow, he ended the life of the Witcher in training Leo during the assault on Kaer Morhen. It was well known that the Professor harboured much hatred towards witches, as he saw them as pathetic relics of the past and saw them as ineffective. You see this even more in the assault on Kaer Morhen, as before the assault he informs all his men that he'll pay 50 orens for every witcher they kill. The Professor was a dangerous man that had killed as many as 17 people according to Eskel, and is also wanted in Redania, Temeria and Kedwin according to Triss. The reasons for the Professor working with the Salamandra is unknown, but many have speculated that it's possibly out of blackmail due to the somewhat rocky relationship between him and the other apparent leader, Azar Javed. The reason for the speculation is due to the way him and Azar communicate with each other, as Azar seems to more order the Professor around and isn't afraid to leave him in hot water if it means saving his own life. We see this on two separate occasions when they both engage in combat with Geralt, to which Azar orders the Professor to take care of Geralt alone before escaping through a portal of some kind. Though this alone isn't much to go on, as after all the Professor is also seen as some sort of leader of the Salamandra alongside Azar, so his intentions for being with the Salamandra could be something else entirely. Ultimately, the plan Azar, the Professor and Berengar came up with was to stage a main attack on the main gate of the keep, to which Azar, the Professor and another group would sneak into the upper courtyard from the lakeside and go into the castle to search for what they came for. During the attack, Geralt and the others catch a glimpse of the pair entering the upper courtyard heading to the castle, to which Triss mentions she doesn't recognise Azar. This is because Azar Javed is one of the highest ranking members of the Salamandra and therefore only shows his face when there's serious business to be handled. Azar Javed was a sorcerer and an alchemist from Zerrikania and, though extremely dangerous, wasn't very well known throughout the continent, but throughout Geralt's investigation into him, we find out much more. What we find out is that Azar is a mage that is extremely adept at wielding fire, so much so that it has become part of his being. At one point, this plays into Geralt's advantage as he fights him surrounded by water, thus weakening his power. We also find out that Azar is a man that enjoys indulging himself in what some would refer to as the luxuries of life, such as women and drugs, namely fisstech, which he had a strong addiction to. Though a drug addict, Azar also had strong political ambitions, which was rather typical of him, being he used to be a member of the Wizard's Circle before being expelled and becoming a renegade mage. After the attack on Kaer Morhen, which ended with the Salamandra now possessing the secrets to Witcher mutations, Geralt followed the trail to Vizima to begin his search for them, not just to get back the secrets of the Witcher's mutations, but also to get revenge on the Professor for killing Leo. Ultimately, Geralt finds out who the Salamandra really are by following up on leads and shaking down Salamandra drug operations. Once Geralt gets closer to uncovering the whereabouts of the Salamandra after a run-in with Azar and the Professor in the swamp, he finds out that the reach of the Salamandra is much deeper and much more complicated than he first envisioned. After much investigative work, Geralt locates the Salamandra base beneath Vizima, to which he encounters Azar and the Professor for a second time, where before the fight breaks out, he has a conversation with Azar. During this conversation, Azar hints to Geralt that there is a need for a new power other than Foltest, and implies that his organisation aims to do something about this. After this conversation, Azar flees once again, leaving the Professor to deal with Geralt, once more showing the type of relationship between Azar and the Professor, highlighting how Azar sees himself as above the Professor. Ultimately, the Professor can't handle Geralt alone, and is defeated in combat. On his body that Geralt has to retrieve from a Kikimor that had eaten him after it had been beaten, he finds a letter. This letter is confirming the intentions of the Salamandra that Azar was telling Geralt about in their previous conversation. It states that they're working with Princess Ada in order to overthrow King Foltest and take the throne. After killing the Professor and finding out about the Salamandra's other plans, he is teleported away from Vizima in order to escape Princess Ada as she seeks to have him executed, as she is also working with the Salamandra at the time. Once teleported away, Geralt runs into Berengar, the Witcher that helped the Salamandra with the attack on Kaer Morhen. During the conversations Geralt has with Berengar, Berengar admits to Geralt that he helped the Salamandra not only with the plan to attack Kaer Morhen, but he also helped the Salamandra with the deciphering of the stolen secrets in order to create mutants. So this means Berengar played a big role in the development of the Salamandra's plans, as without him they possibly wouldn't have been able to steal the secrets, and even if they did, they might have had a harder time trying to decipher them. After hearing this, Geralt has the option of killing Berengar, but if not, he and Berengar part ways, to which they will meet again later. After Geralt returned to Vizima and lifted the curse once again from Princess Ada, he is informed of the Salamandra's main hideout, which he goes to in order to finish the job. Once there, he is informed of how the Salamandra, along with the help of the Order of the Flaming Rose, plan to overthrow King Foltest. Their plan included staging a fight between humans and non-humans, to which the Order of the Flaming Rose, along with the mutants they'd created, would come in and save the day, to which they would have the trust and love of the people, as they would be their saviour. Once the city would be saved, they would take the throne easily and rule. Geralt ultimately puts a stop to this plan as he chases Azar deep into the hideout and fights him. Before the fight starts, Berengar enters the fight on Geralt's side to somewhat get revenge on Azar and the Salamandra for manipulating him. After killing Azar, Geralt hears something coming from a magic portal communication mirror in the corner. It's the Grand Master of the Order of the Flaming Rose requesting more mutants. This is where Geralt finds the connection between the two organisations and discovers the true reason for the Salamandra attacking Kaer Morhen, which was to get the secrets in order to create these mutants. But that's where the story ends in regards to the Salamandra. The remaining members, now left without leaders, end up dispersing throughout the continent to form smaller, unrelated criminal groups, rendering the Salamandra now defunct. So yeah, in the end, it turned out that the Salamandra were far bigger than just a small-time criminal operation, as it turned out they were affiliated with a very influential religious group that had plans to take over the reign of not just Temeria, but the whole north. But in the end, they didn't stand a chance against Geralt of Rivia, who led to their downfall. And that's the lore behind the criminal organisation known as the Salamandra, and also a rundown of the two main leaders. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider watching my other lore videos. I've got a link to them in the top right. Also, please consider subscribing to keep up to date with my lore videos. And thanks for watching.